Have you ever looked at your phone and realized that the people who were supposed to love you the most had already decided you didn't belong? I wish I could tell you that was the worst moment of my life. It wasn't. The worst moment came a few hours later, when I opened Instagram and saw a family photo on my screen. My parents, my brother, and my sister were all smiling on a beautiful beach. The caption read, "Best trip ever, when she's not around." Face with tears of joy. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My name is Emma, and I'm 24 years old. Until that Labor Day weekend, I believed that no matter how distant my family seemed, deep down they still cared about me. I kept telling myself they were just busy, that one day everything would be different. I couldn't have been more wrong. Looking back, the signs had always been there. Family dinners were planned without telling me. My birthday was always treated like an ordinary day, while everyone else's celebrations were unforgettable. Whenever we took family pictures, I somehow ended up standing at the edge, almost like I didn't belong. I noticed all of it, but I never said anything. I was afraid that if I admitted the truth, I would also have to accept that my own family didn't value me the way I valued them. 3 weeks before Labor Day, something felt different. Every time I entered a room, conversations suddenly stopped. My parents would quickly lock their phones, and my brother would change the subject. Whenever I asked what was going on, they all gave me the same answer. Nothing important. One evening, I came home from work earlier than expected. As I walked past the dining room, I heard everyone laughing. I looked inside. My parents, my brother Jake, and my younger sister Lily were sitting around the table. There were travel websites open on a laptop, hotel bookings on someone's phone, and a map spread across the table. The moment they saw me, the laptop was closed. The room became completely silent. Trying not to make things awkward, I smiled and asked, "Are you guys planning a trip?" Jake looked at my parents before answering. "No, we're just looking at some random places." Something about his voice didn't sound convincing. But I didn't argue. I simply nodded and walked upstairs, trying to ignore the strange feeling growing inside me. The next morning was Friday. Labor Day weekend had officially begun. When I woke up, the house was unusually quiet. No voices. No footsteps. No smell of coffee. I walked downstairs and immediately noticed that every car was gone. Then I saw a folded note on the kitchen counter with my name written on it. I opened it, expecting an explanation. Instead, it said, "We figured you'd rather stay home since you're always busy with work. There's food in the fridge. Don't forget to feed Max. We'll be back on Monday." That was it. No invitation. No apology. No phone call. No chance to decide for myself. My entire family had left for a holiday vacation without even asking if I wanted to come. As painful as that felt, I still had no idea that the real heartbreak was only a few hours away. For the next few days, I kept telling myself I was overthinking everything. Mail gets delayed. Envelopes get lost. People forget things. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Still, every afternoon, I'd unlock my mailbox with a tiny bit of hope, only to find bills, advertisements, and grocery store flyers, but never an invitation to my own sister's baby shower. A week passed. Then another. By then, nearly everyone in the family was talking about the event. My cousin Rachel texted me a picture of the invitation. It was beautiful. Cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering, tiny watercolor flowers around the edges, and a note asking guests to wear pastel colors. At the bottom, it listed the venue, a beautiful event hall about 20 minutes from my apartment. Rachel wrote, "Isn't this gorgeous?" Emily really went all out. I stared at the picture for several seconds. I still hadn't received one. For the first time, I started wondering if this wasn't a mailing mistake after all. I picked up my phone and sent Emily a simple message. "Hey. I haven't gotten my invitation yet. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't sent to the wrong address." I read the message 3 times before pressing send. I didn't want it to sound accusatory. She didn't reply. Hours passed. That evening, I saw that she'd posted photos on social media from lunch with friends. She was obviously using her phone. Still no response. The next morning, I sent another text. "No rush. Just checking because Mom said invitations were mailed last week." Nothing. By the 3rd day, I felt embarrassed. Maybe she was busy. Maybe I was bothering her. Then, just before dinner, my phone buzzed. Emily had finally replied. "Oh, we're actually at full capacity." That was it. One sentence. No apology. No explanation. Just, "We're at full capacity." I frowned. The answer didn't make any sense. She had spent weeks telling everyone how she'd rented a large venue because she wanted a huge celebration. How could they suddenly run out of space? I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. "So, should I just RSVP later if someone cancels?" A few minutes later, another message appeared. "I'll let you know." That response hurt more than I expected. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how cold they felt. This wasn't someone talking to her sister. It sounded like I was asking for tickets to a sold-out concert. That weekend, our parents invited everyone over for Sunday dinner. Emily and Jason were already there when I arrived. She greeted me with a quick hug. Jason smiled politely. Neither of them mentioned the baby shower. Not once. Instead, they spent most of dinner talking about guest lists, decorations, and party favors. Emily laughed about the dessert table. Jason joked that his office friends couldn't wait to meet the family. I sat there quietly, waiting for someone to explain why I apparently wasn't important enough to be included. No one did. After dinner, I helped Mom wash the dishes. When Emily and Jason left, Mom noticed I seemed unusually quiet. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I hesitated. "I never got invited to the baby shower." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" I asked Emily. "What did she say?" I repeated the exact message. "We're at full capacity." Mom's face changed. She looked genuinely surprised. "That can't be right." I thought so too. She dried her hands on a towel. "Let me talk to her." I immediately shook my head. "No. I don't want to start drama. If she doesn't want me there, I'll just stay home." Mom frowned. "You're her sister. There has to be some misunderstanding." I smiled weakly. "I hope you're right." But deep inside, for the first time, I wasn't sure there was any misunderstanding at all. Something told me this wasn't an accident. Someone had made a decision. And I was afraid I already. 2 days after our family dinner, I was making coffee before work when my phone rang. It was Mom. That wasn't unusual, but something about the way she said my name made my stomach tighten. "Sarah, do you have a minute?" "Of course." She sighed before speaking again. "I talked to Emily." I leaned against the kitchen counter, hoping she was about to tell me everything had been a misunderstanding. Instead, there was a long, uncomfortable silence. "What did she say?" I asked. Mom hesitated. "She still wants you to come." I blinked. "Okay. But..." There it was. That one word. "But..." She said there still isn't a seat available. I frowned. What does that even mean? Mom lowered her voice. She said someone might leave after they finish eating. I stared out my apartment window, trying to process what she was saying. So, I'm supposed to stand around until someone leaves. Another long silence. Then Mom quietly said the words I will never forget. "Emily suggested you could wait at the pub across the street." For a second, I honestly thought I'd heard her wrong. "I'm sorry, what?" "The pub across from the venue. She said you could have a drink there while you wait." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my brain refused to believe it was real. "You're joking." "I wish I was." Mom sounded embarrassed. She said once a few guests leave, someone can come get you. I felt my face grow hot. So everyone else gets to celebrate together. And I'm supposed to sit alone in a bar. Mom didn't answer. I already knew why. Because there wasn't a good answer. I walked into my living room, trying to calm myself down. Did she really say that? Yes. Word for word. Mom sighed again. She said the pub isn't very nice. But it would only be for an hour or two. That made it even worse. She knew it wasn't a nice place. She knew exactly what she was asking me to do. I remembered the pub immediately. Old wooden sign. Sticky tables. A place where construction workers stopped after long shifts. Nothing wrong with that. But it certainly wasn't somewhere you'd send your own sister while the rest of the family celebrated a baby shower. I rubbed my forehead. Mom. Why me? Why not ask one of Jason's coworkers? Another pause. This one lasted even longer. Finally. Mom answered. Because Jason really wants them there. I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. I wasn't being replaced by family. I was being replaced by coworkers. People Emily had known for less than 2 years were apparently more important than the sister who had spent months helping prepare for this baby. I couldn't believe it. How many coworkers are coming? I think 8. 8? Yes. So she couldn't tell one of them there wasn't enough room? Mom spoke carefully. She said Jason's promotion depends on maintaining good relationships. I almost laughed again. So my relationship with my own sister matters less than Jason trying to impress his boss. Mom didn't disagree. Instead, she quietly said, I know this isn't fair. That sentence hurt more than anything else. Because it confirmed she knew exactly how wrong it was. I sat down on my couch. Did Emily even seem upset about this? Mom hesitated. Not really. She kept saying she was sure you'd understand. Understand? She expected me to understand why I was being treated like an optional guest at my own sister's baby shower. I thought about every weekend I'd spent painting walls. Every meal I'd cooked. Every box I'd carried upstairs. Every late-night phone call where I'd listened to her cry about morning sickness and anxiety. Apparently, none of it mattered. To Emily, I wasn't family. I was convenient. Useful. Easy to take for granted. I took a deep breath. Mom. I'm not doing it. I will not sit in some dirty pub waiting for permission to attend my own sister's baby shower. I have too much self-respect for that. Mom didn't argue. She simply whispered. I was afraid you'd say that. I know. I'll talk to her again. No. I stopped her. Please don't. If Emily really thinks this is acceptable, nothing you say is going to change who she is. After we hung up, I sat in silence for nearly an hour. I kept hoping my phone would ring. That Emily would call. That she'd laugh and say the whole thing had been a terrible misunderstanding. She never did. Instead, later that afternoon, she sent me a single text message. I hope you're not making this into a big deal. I stared at the screen. After everything, she thought I was the one causing the problem. That was the moment something inside me changed. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to earn a place in someone else's family. Because if my own sister believed I belonged across the street instead of beside her, maybe I didn't belong there at all. Emily's text stayed on my screen for a long time. I hope you're not making this into a big deal. I read it over and over, trying to figure out if I was somehow misunderstanding her. But there was nothing to misunderstand. Not once had she apologized. Not once had she said she wished things were different. Instead, she acted as if I was being unreasonable for expecting a chair at my own sister's baby shower. I typed at least 5 different replies. Then I deleted every single one. Finally, I sent just one sentence. I'm not angry that there's no seat. I'm hurt that you thought I belonged in a pub instead of with my family. She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. For the next 3 days, we didn't speak. Mom called twice, hoping I'd change my mind. I just don't want this to become something everyone talks about, she said. I don't either, I replied. But pretending nothing happened won't fix it. Dad called the next evening. My father wasn't a very emotional man. He usually stayed out of family arguments. So when I saw his name on my phone, I knew Mom had probably asked him to talk to me. Hey, sweetheart. Hi, Dad. He cleared his throat. I heard about the baby shower. Yeah. There was an awkward pause. I know your feelings are hurt. My feelings aren't just hurt, Dad. I'm being treated like an extra. He sighed. I understand. No. I don't think you do. If this happened to Emily, would anyone tell her to wait in a bar until someone finished eating? He didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. Of course they wouldn't. If Emily had been excluded from someone else's celebration, our parents would have defended her immediately. But when it happened to me, everyone wanted me to be the bigger person. Dad finally spoke. I just don't want this to damage your relationship forever. I looked around my apartment. There were still baby gifts sitting in my dining room. A stroller. A diaper bag. A handmade baby blanket I'd spent weeks knitting while watching television at night. I'd poured my heart into those gifts. Not because anyone expected me to. Because I loved my future niece or nephew already. I don't think I'm the one damaging the relationship, I said quietly. Dad didn't argue. After we hung up, I walked over to the pile of wrapped presents. For the first time, I wondered if I should even bring them. Would Emily even notice if I wasn't there? Or was she only expecting the gifts? The following afternoon, my cousin Rachel called. I have to ask you something. Sure. Are you really not coming Saturday? I don't think so. There was genuine confusion in her voice. Emily told everyone you were working. I frowned. What? She said your boss wouldn't give you the day off. I almost laughed. I never said that. You didn't? No. I took the day off weeks ago. Rachel became very quiet. So, that's not why you're missing it? No. I wasn't invited. Another long silence. Finally, Rachel whispered. Wait. What do you mean you weren't invited? I realized then that nobody knew the truth. Emily had already created her own version of the story. Everyone believed I'd chosen work over family. No one knew she'd chosen coworkers over her own sister. Rachel sounded upset. Sarah. Are you serious? I wish I wasn't. I told her everything. The missing invitation. The messages. The phone call from Mom. The suggestion that I wait across the street until a seat became available. Rachel couldn't believe it. She actually said that? Yes. Oh my God. I thought there had to be another reason. So did I. She apologized several times, even though none of it was her fault. Before hanging up, she said something that stuck with me. You know this is going to come out eventually. I know. I don't want it to. But people are going to ask questions. That night, I barely slept. Saturday morning arrived faster than I expected. The baby shower was scheduled to begin at 1 o'clock. Around 10, Mom sent me a message. There's still time if you change your mind. I stared at it for a while before replying. I love you, Mom. But I'm not sitting in a pub waiting to be invited into my own family. She responded with a simple heart emoji. Nothing more. At exactly 12:30, I watched from my apartment window as rain began falling outside. For a brief moment, I wondered what everyone was doing. Were they decorating? Taking pictures? Laughing together? I pushed the thought away. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee, curled up on the couch with a book, and tried to convince myself I had made the right decision. I had no idea that less than 2 hours later, my phone would start ringing non-stop. And the secret Emily had worked so hard to hide would finally be exposed. At exactly 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was my Aunt Linda. That was strange. We loved each other, but she rarely called. We usually texted on birthdays or holidays. I answered. Hey, Aunt Linda. Her voice sounded cheerful. Hi, sweetheart. We missed you today. I smiled politely. I heard. So. She continued, how's work? Emily said your boss wouldn't let you take the day off. I closed my eyes. There it was again. The lie. I could have gone along with it. I could have said, yeah, work was crazy. The conversation would have ended there. Nobody would have known what really happened. Emily's perfect day would have stayed perfect. But then I remembered every hour I'd spent helping her. Every favor. Every promise. Every time she'd thanked me and told me she couldn't do this without me. And somehow, I still wasn't important enough to deserve a chair. I took a slow breath. Aunt Linda. I'm actually at home. She paused. You're home? Yes. I requested today off weeks ago. Silence. Then she asked the question I'd been expecting. So why aren't you here? I didn't exaggerate. I didn't insult Emily. I simply told the truth. I wasn't invited. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally she laughed nervously. Oh, stop teasing. I'm serious. But Emily said. I know what she said. I never had to work today. I wasn't invited because there wasn't enough room. Aunt Linda sounded genuinely confused. But this venue is huge. I know. So, what happened? I hesitated. Then I quietly answered. Jason's coworkers took the remaining seats. She gasped. What? And when I asked where I was supposed to sit, I swallowed. They suggested I wait at the pub across the street until someone left. For several seconds. Neither of us spoke. Then I heard her whisper. Oh my God. I thought she was joking when she mentioned someone waiting outside. What do you mean? I overheard Emily talking to one of her friends earlier. I assumed she meant a caterer. No. It was me. Before I could respond, Aunt Linda suddenly said. Don't hang up. I heard movement. Voices. A chair scraping across the floor. Then muffled conversations. She'd walked back into the baby shower. A minute later. She returned. Sarah. People are asking where you are. What did you tell them? The truth. I leaned back on my couch. I didn't want anyone embarrassed. I just answered your question. Within 15 minutes. My phone started vibrating non-stop. First Rachel. Then Uncle Mark. Then my cousin Olivia. Then another aunt. Every single person asked the same question. Is it true? I answered exactly the same way every time. No anger. No drama. Just facts. I wasn't invited because there wasn't enough room. I was told to wait across the street. Nothing more. Apparently. The atmosphere inside the event hall changed almost immediately. Rachel later told me what happened. At first, people thought there had been some misunderstanding. Then they realized everyone had been given a different explanation. Some guests had been told I was working. Others believed I was sick. A few thought I'd chosen not to attend because we weren't close anymore. The stories didn't match. People started comparing notes. Eventually, someone asked Emily directly. Why isn't Sarah here? Emily smiled. She's busy. Then Aunt Linda spoke up. No. She's at home. The room reportedly went completely silent. Emily's smile disappeared. What do you mean? I just spoke to her. She said she wasn't invited. Jason immediately interrupted. That's not what happened. But by then, the questions had already started. If there wasn't room, why were Jason's coworkers here? Why didn't one of them give up a seat? Why was Sarah told to wait in a pub? No. I answered the phone almost immediately. Hello. Emily didn't even say hi. What is wrong with you? Her voice was loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. For a moment, I was completely speechless. I'm sorry, what? You know exactly what I'm talking about. No, actually, I don't. She let out an angry sigh. You've ruined my baby shower. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I ruined it. Yes. Everyone is talking about you instead of celebrating my pregnancy. I sat there in silence, trying to process what she had just said. Finally, I asked the obvious question. What did I lie about? She hesitated. I never said you lied. Exactly. I only answered questions people asked me. You could have just told them you were busy. So you wanted me to lie. She didn't answer. Instead, she became even more frustrated. You embarrassed me in front of Jason's coworkers. I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it was unbelievable. So that's what this is really about. What do you mean? You don't care that your own sister wasn't invited. You care that your coworkers found out. They're Jason's coworkers, she corrected. Whatever. They're still more important to you than I am. That's not fair. No. You replaced me with people you've known for less than 2 years. They're important for Jason's career. And what about your family? There was complete silence. That silence answered my question better than words ever could. After a few seconds she spoke again, this time much quieter. You could have just waited at the pub. I honestly thought I'd misheard her. What? It would have only been for a little while. I closed my eyes. Even after everything that had happened, she still believed her plan had been reasonable. Emily. Listen to yourself. You expected your sister to sit alone in a rundown pub while strangers attended your baby shower. I didn't think it was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal to you. It was humiliating to me. She sighed dramatically. You've always been so sensitive. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Growing up, every time my feelings were hurt, I was told I was too sensitive. If Emily borrowed my clothes without asking, I was too sensitive. If she forgot my birthday, I was too sensitive. If she made fun of me in front of friends, I was too sensitive. Somehow, no matter what happened, my reaction was always the problem, not her behavior. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about the baby shower. This had been happening my entire life. I had simply refused to see it. I took a slow breath. No. I'm finally reacting the way I should have years ago. She didn't respond. Instead, Jason's voice suddenly came through the phone. Sarah. His tone was calm. Almost rehearsed. I think everyone's emotions are running high. I frowned. I don't think emotions are the issue. We're all family here. No. You treated me like I wasn't. He ignored that. I think you owe Emily an apology. I actually laughed out loud. I'm sorry. You caused unnecessary drama. I answered one question honestly. You made private family matters public. They became public because you lied. Another silence. Jason lowered his voice. You know my boss was here today. There it is. What? The real reason. This whole thing wasn't about celebrating your baby. It was about impressing your boss. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said quietly. You don't understand how important this promotion is. I understand perfectly. You were willing to sacrifice your relationship with your wife's sister to impress people from work. He had no response. Emily grabbed the phone back. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I felt something inside me finally settle. For days I'd been wondering if I was overreacting. If maybe I should have just accepted the situation. But listening to them, I realized neither of them felt guilty. Not even a little. They weren't sorry for excluding me. They were angry because people had found out. There was a huge difference. I spoke calmly. I hope you have a healthy pregnancy. I hope the baby is happy. But until you understand why this hurt me, I think we need some distance. Sarah, don't you dare hang up. Click. I ended the call. For the first time in years, I chose peace over pleasing someone who would never choose me. I placed my phone on the coffee table and looked across the room. The wrapped baby gifts were still sitting exactly where I'd left them. The stroller. The diaper bag. The handmade blanket. Hours of love. Wrapped in colorful paper. Suddenly, I wasn't sure they should ever leave my apartment. Because for the first time, I had to ask myself a painful question. Did Emily love me? Or did she only love what I could do for her? The answer would come the very next morning. And it would change everything I thought I knew about my sister. The morning after the baby shower, I woke up feeling emotionally drained. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the phone call with Emily. Not once had she apologized. Not once had she asked if I was okay. Instead, she'd blamed me for ruining her day. I made myself a cup of coffee and decided to stay away from my phone for a while. I needed peace. Around 10 o'clock, I finally picked it up. There were dozens of notifications. Texts from cousins. Messages from aunts. A missed call from mom. Even a voicemail from dad. But one message stood out. It was from Emily. For a split second, I wondered if she'd finally come to her senses. Maybe she'd slept on everything. Maybe she'd realized how hurtful she'd been. I opened the message. Are you still bringing the stroller? I stared at the screen. That was it. No, how are you? No, I'm sorry. No, can we talk? Just one question. About the most expensive gift on her registry. I couldn't believe it. A few seconds later, another message appeared. I need to know because the store says it's almost sold out. I felt my heart sink. The only reason she'd contacted me was to make sure she was still getting the gift. Not because she missed me. Not because she regretted what happened. Because she wanted the stroller. I looked across my living room. The stroller box was still sitting against the wall. Brand new. Still sealed. Next to it was a diaper bag I'd spent nearly $200 on. Beside that, a handmade baby blanket I'd knitted over several weeks. I remembered every stitch. Every evening after work, I'd sat on my couch making sure it would be perfect. I wanted my future niece or nephew to have something made with love. Tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money. Because I suddenly realized something painful. Emily had expected all of this. Without expecting me. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mom. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. I heard you and Emily argued. That's one way to describe it. Mom sighed. She's upset. I know. She's saying you embarrassed her. I stayed quiet. Then Mom said something that surprised me. But I also told her she owes you an apology. I blinked. You did? Yes. I've been thinking about everything. What she did wasn't right. Hearing those words meant more than I expected. For the first time, someone in my family admitted I hadn't imagined it. Mom continued. But she's very emotional right now. I smiled sadly. Mom. Being pregnant doesn't make it okay to treat people badly. I know. I just wish the two of you could fix this. So do I. But I can't fix something I'm not responsible for. There was silence. Finally, Mom asked softly. What are you going to do about the gifts? I looked at the stroller again. I honestly don't know. She didn't pressure me. Instead, she simply said. Whatever you decide. Make sure it's something you can live with. After we hung up, I sat quietly for nearly an hour. Then I picked up my receipt folder. The stroller was still within the return window. So was the diaper bag. I placed both receipts on the table. My hands were shaking. Not because returning them was difficult. Because it felt like accepting a truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't about gifts anymore. It was about respect. I couldn't keep rewarding someone who treated me like I didn't matter. Just as I was gathering everything together, someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Dad was standing there. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. Without saying a word, he looked past me. At the stack of baby gifts in my living room. Then he quietly asked. Can I come in? Something in his voice told me. This conversation was going to change everything. I stepped aside and let Dad into my apartment. He walked in slowly, looking around the living room before his eyes settled on the pile of wrapped baby gifts. The stroller. The diaper bag. The handmade blanket. He let out a quiet sigh. So, you really haven't taken any of it over? I shook my head. No. He nodded, almost as if he'd expected that answer. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then he sat down on the couch and rubbed his hands together. I owe you an apology. I looked at him, surprised. Dad. No. Let me finish. I should have said something sooner. I should have stood up for you the moment I heard Emily's plan. His voice cracked slightly. But I kept hoping she'd change her mind. I was wrong. I sat across from him. I've spent my whole life trying not to disappoint anyone. So have I, he admitted. That wasn't an answer I expected. Dad had always seemed calm. Confident. Like nothing ever bothered him. But now. He looked exhausted. You know, he said quietly, this isn't the first time Emily has expected everyone to put her first. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked down at the floor. When you were kids. Your mother and I made a lot of excuses for her. I stayed silent. Every time she crossed a line. We told ourselves she was just strong-willed. When she took something that belonged to you. We said she didn't mean any harm. When she hurt your feelings. We asked you to be the bigger person. His words hit me harder than I expected. Because they were true. Every birthday where I gave up what I wanted. Every holiday where I stayed quiet to avoid arguments. Every family gathering where Emily somehow became the center of attention. I had convinced myself that was simply normal. Dad looked at me with tears in his eyes. We failed you. I swallowed hard. You don't have to say that. Yes, I do. I've been thinking about it all night. You've spent years making sacrifices for this family. And what have we asked from Emily? I didn't answer. Because we both knew the answer. Very little. Dad leaned back in the chair. Yesterday, after you hung up on her. Emily started crying. I figured. But do you know what upset her the most? I shook my head. She wasn't crying because you'd been hurt. She was crying because people stopped taking pictures. I stared at him. What? The photographer left early. Several relatives went home. And Jason's boss didn't stay as long as they'd hoped. I couldn't believe it. So that's what she cared about. Dad nodded slowly. Your aunt asked her if she wanted to call you and apologize. And? She said. He hesitated before repeating Emily's exact words. Why should I apologize? Sarah made this all about herself. A lump formed in my throat. Even after everything. She still couldn't see what she'd done. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and handed me an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a folded receipt. I looked at it, confused. Then I noticed the amount. Dad had quietly transferred money into my account that morning. It matched almost exactly what I'd spent on the stroller and diaper bag. Dad. I can't take this. Yes, you can. It's not for the gifts. It's. The drive to the store felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in days, my mind wasn't racing. I wasn't rehearsing arguments. I wasn't wondering if I'd overreacted. I wasn't hoping for an apology that clearly wasn't coming. I simply knew what I had to do. When I walked into the customer service department, the employee smiled politely. Returning these? I nodded. Yes. She scanned the receipt, checked the unopened boxes, and within a few minutes the refund was approved. Everything looks good, she said. The money should be back on your card within a few business days. I thanked her and walked out carrying only one thing. The handmade baby blanket. I couldn't return that. I'd made it with my own hands. For a moment, I considered mailing it anyway. The baby had done nothing wrong. But every time I pictured Emily opening it, I remembered her message. Asterisk, are you still bringing the stroller? Asterisk. Not. Asterisk, can we fix this? Asterisk. Not. Asterisk, I'm sorry. Asterisk. Just the stroller. I folded the blanket carefully and placed it in a storage box when I got home. Maybe one day things would be different. Maybe one day I'd give it to the child personally. But today wasn't that day. Around dinner time, my phone rang. Emily. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. What? Where are the gifts? Straight to the point. No greeting. No apology. They're gone. What do you mean they're gone? I returned them. The silence on the other end lasted only a second before she exploded. You what? I returned everything. You can't do that. I already did. I was counting on that stroller. I closed my eyes. There it was again. Not once had she asked why. Not once had she wondered how I felt. She was angry because she wasn't getting expensive presents. You promised. I never promised I'd reward someone for treating me like I didn't matter. Her breathing became heavier. This is unbelievable. No. What was unbelievable was asking me to wait in a pub. You keep bringing that up. Because you keep pretending it wasn't humiliating. Before she could answer, another voice came onto the line. It was Mom. Sarah. I just got here. I realized Emily must have put the phone on speaker. Can we all please calm down? I'm calm, I replied. I simply returned gifts that hadn't been given. Emily interrupted. Tell her she's being selfish. Mom didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked me one question. Sarah. If Emily apologized right now, would that change anything? I thought about it honestly. Then I answered. A real apology? Yes. I'd listen. Emily laughed sarcastically. So now I have to beg? No. You have to understand. Those were two very different things. Dad's voice suddenly joined the conversation. I agree with Sarah. The room went quiet. Emily sounded shocked. Dad? You heard me. You owe your sister an apology. I don't owe anyone anything. Dad spoke firmly. That's exactly the problem. There was another long silence. Then Emily said something none of us expected. So you're all choosing her over me? Dad answered without raising his voice. No. We're choosing what's right. Emily immediately hung up. I looked at my phone for several seconds. The conversation was over. But somehow, I knew the story wasn't. The next few days were awkward. Some relatives stopped calling Emily altogether. Others reached out to me privately. One by one, they admitted something I had suspected for years. They had seen Emily treat people this way before. Friends. Coworkers. Even extended family. But everyone kept making excuses because that's just how Emily is. Not anymore. For the first time, people were holding her accountable. 3 weeks passed. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox. There was no return address. Just my name written neatly across the front. Inside was a handwritten note. And the signature at the bottom made my heart stop. It was from Emily. I stood in my kitchen for almost a full minute, staring at the envelope. Emily had never written me a letter before. Not once. Everything between us had always been texts, phone calls, or rushed conversations at family gatherings. Seeing my name written in her handwriting felt strange. Part of me didn't even want to open it. Another part of me hoped it contained the words I'd been waiting weeks to hear. I'm sorry. I slowly unfolded the paper. It wasn't very long. The first line read. Asterisk, Sarah, I know you're probably still angry with me. Asterisk. So far, not bad. Then I kept reading. Asterisk, I never wanted the baby shower to turn into such a disaster. Asterisk. I frowned. She still wasn't taking responsibility. She continued. Asterisk, Jason and I were under a lot of pressure. His boss was coming, and we wanted everything to be perfect. I thought you'd understand because you've always been the reasonable one. Asterisk. I stopped reading for a second. There it was again. The same excuse. The same expectation. Because I was reasonable, I was supposed to accept being treated unfairly. I finished the letter. The last paragraph said, Asterisk, I hope someday we can move past this. The baby deserves a family that gets along. Asterisk. She signed it. Asterisk Emily. Asterisk. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of the pain she caused. No regret for asking me to wait across the street. She wanted peace. Without accountability. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. For the first time since everything happened. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt calm. That evening, I decided to write back. Not because I wanted another argument, but because I wanted to close this chapter honestly. I wrote, Emily. Asterisk, I never wanted your baby shower to become a family scandal. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wanted to celebrate with you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I painted the nursery because I loved you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I bought gifts because I was excited to become an aunt. Asterisk. Asterisk, I showed up every time you needed help because I believed we were rebuilding our relationship. Asterisk. But when you chose coworkers over your own sister. Asterisk, you didn't just take away a seat. Asterisk. Asterisk, you showed me where I stood in your life. Asterisk. I paused for a moment before writing the final paragraph. Asterisk, if you ever truly understand why that hurt me and you're willing to take responsibility, I'll be willing to have a conversation. Asterisk. Asterisk, until then, I need distance, not because I hate you, but because I finally respect myself. Asterisk. I signed my name. Folded the letter. Placed it in an envelope. And mailed it the next morning. Weeks turned into months. Our conversations stopped completely. Family holidays felt different. Some relatives stayed close to Emily. Others quietly admitted they understood why I'd stepped away. No one tried to pressure me anymore. Then, 6 months later. Mom called. The baby's here. A healthy little girl. I smiled. No matter what had happened between Emily and me. An innocent child had entered the world. I mailed a simple card. Inside, I wrote only one sentence. Asterisk, I hope she grows up always knowing what it feels like to be chosen by the people who love her. Asterisk. There was no money. No expensive gifts. Just sincere wishes. About a year later, I heard from Rachel that Emily had changed. Becoming a mother had forced her to see relationships differently. She'd started apologizing to several people she'd hurt over the years. One afternoon, my phone rang. Emily. This time. Her voice sounded completely different. Quiet. Nervous. She didn't defend herself. She didn't mention Jason. She didn't blame anyone else. The first words out of her mouth were, Asterisk, Sarah. I was wrong. Asterisk. Then she cried. Not because people judged her. Not because gifts were returned. Not because the baby shower was ruined. She cried because she finally understood how deeply she'd hurt me. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Trust never returns that easily. We met for coffee several times over the following months. Some conversations were uncomfortable. Some ended in tears. Some ended in silence. But this time, she listened. Really listened. Today, our relationship isn't perfect. It probably never will be. But it's honest. And honestly, that's enough for me. Because I learned something through all of this. Being family doesn't give someone permission to disrespect you. Love without respect isn't healthy. Kindness without boundaries becomes sacrifice. And sometimes, the most important seat you'll ever fight for is the one you save for your own self-respect.